Don't let her get away!
This wicked witch.
Let's talk about Wicked, which I will tell you I am Wicked pilled. As somebody who's never watched the Broadway musical, I've just heard the jingles, the music, and all of that. And I know a little bit about it as well. And I do know that a lot of people were wondering, how is this a part one for a musical and all of that? It's not as long as they're making it out to be, right? And I did read that somebody said that the first part of Wicked is the entire runtime of the musical, that they really wanted to flesh out these characters and really bring us into this world right before we get into part two, which I've already read about the Wicked musical and seen some things about it and how part two will be. I want to talk about that over the weekend, so stay tuned for that video probably on Sunday. But let's talk right now about the ending of the part one for Wicked, in which we see Elphaba and Glinda pretty much at a crossroads, if you will. So of course, spoilers ahead for Wicked part one, and my thoughts and opinions on it will be all spoiler filled. This is a video where we're just recapping the movie, giving a little bit of insight into it and some of those thoughts here and there. And now, before we get any further into it, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. We're trying to reach 35,000 subscribers. So pretty much what we see here is we see that the movie starts to take place right after Dorothy pretty much throws the water on the Wicked Witch of the West, in which we see in The Wizard of Oz. And we see that all of Oz is celebrating, and Glinda the Good Witch of the North tells a story of how she became friends with Elphaba Throp, now known as the Wicked Witch of the West, where we realize that they both went to Shiz University, where the Wicked Witch of the West's sister Nessa Rose attended, which is this college called Shiz University that is ran by Madame Morrible. Now, Elphaba throughout her whole life and even at university has been mocked for her green skin, which we don't know why she was actually born with the green skin, but we will actually find that out in Wicked Part 2, and I'll talk more about that in another video. This is just spoilers for the first movie. I don't want to give spoilers for the second movie, especially if you don't want to know much of it, even though it's been a Broadway musical for a bit, right? But I understand some people don't want any of those things. So this includes also the cast that is Fiyero Tigler, who is a Winky Prince, who is played by Jonathan Bailey. You also in this have Ethan Slater, who is playing Bach Woodsman, who is a munchkin that is actually in love with Glinda. And of course in this as well, you have Peter Dinklage playing Dr. Dillamond, a goat and history professor of Shiz University. So something that you have to know is going on here is that a lot of animals in this world are able to talk, and they have tasks and they have jobs and things like that, but somebody wants to push these animals away and sort of have them go back to just being animals and not talking and things like that. So that's something of a conflict we see going on here throughout the whole story. Also the conflict between Glinda as well as Elphaba, who are sort of enemies of sorts at the beginning, because Glinda wants to be a sorceress, a witch and all of that, but we see that Elphaba is the one that actually has those abilities, and that's why she kind of catches the eye of Madame Morrible, who's played by Michelle Yeoh, who is the Dean of Sorcery at Shiz University. And Glinda feels a little jealous about this. A lot of the students there sort of reject Elphaba because of the color of her skin and her having magic and things like that as well. They're kind of just pushing her aside, Glinda as well in there. Fiyero seems to be the only one who kind of has a liking towards Elphaba and doesn't really care about her skin color or things like that. We see things start to really change between Elphaba and Glinda when Glinda decides to tell Bach, who is sort of infatuated with her, to invite Nessa to a dance, the Ozdust. And this kind of has Elphaba looking at Glinda in a different light, just because of the fact that Nessa seems to be happy and coming out of her shell now. And so we see that she goes and talks to Madame Morrible to let Glinda into their practice when they're doing the magic test and things like that. And then we see Glinda just accepts Elphaba, and they have a very tender moment. I'm telling you, that was a moment that really caught me, and I was just in my feelings watching that. I felt the tears streaming down my face when that scene came up. It was just beautifully executed by Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande. Like, there was so much like beautiful moments there, and it really was a moment, I think, when the film went from being good to just amazing, honestly. Like, that second half after that was just incredible to witness. We then see that the next day Dr. Dillamond announces he is retiring due to the school board now disallowing talking animals to work at Shiz, and they will actually have a new professor who is attempting to do experimentation on a frightened lion cub by saying that animals should be in these cages and they should be like not dominant at all and they should listen to humans and things like that. We see that Elphaba has had enough of this. She really is concerned about the animals and what's going to come for them next, and her and Fiyero actually intervene and are able to escape the school with the cub after they make everybody in the classroom go to sleep. You see, there's like a tension between Elphaba, Fiyero, and Glinda, and sort of a love triangle of sorts. Elphaba sort of comes to the conclusion that maybe Fiyero will never love her as much as Glinda and chooses to let him go with Glinda, and this she will do her own thing. We eventually see that Elphaba is summoned by the Wizard of Oz to meet with them and talk about their magical powers. Glinda comes on board the train to go to Oz's capital, the Emerald City. After the wizard, however, we discover that things may not be as peachy as they sounded, and yes, indeed, the Wizard of Oz, as we all know from the Wizard of Oz, the movie, is a fake, and they are just there trying to use their power and influence to still stay at the top, and he wants to use Elphaba in order to be able to read from the Grimoire spellbook because he can't do that himself, inadvertently making her read a spell that makes the monkeys there fly and sprout wings. And it was just a very disturbing moment, right? These monkeys were in pain and all of that, and all the wizard and Madame Marvel could think was, we are going to use these as spies in order to find the last remaining animals that are trying to hide from us, because we want to push them aside. And like the Wizard of Oz says, we need to create an enemy for the people. That way they come to us and we have more control over them. So a very timely movie, if you ask me, honestly, with a lot of the things going on in our world today with con men and these sort of like putting these people as the enemy of the people, even though we do know who the enemy of the people is the con men, you know. That's an interesting thing right there with the Wizard of Oz. So what we see pretty much happen, however, is that Elphaba and Glinda go to the attic and try to escape, but it might just be too late, as Madame Marvel has now spread out the message to the Oz citizens that Elphaba is a wicked witch and wants to do harm to the Oz people. Now Glinda and Elphaba try to escape, but we see that the guards make it. They capture Glinda, but Elphaba is able to use the spell from the Grimoire book in order for herself to be able to fly, and she does so in a broom and bows to stop the horrible plans of the wizard as her and Glinda say goodbye to one another as a power outage goes through Oz. So that was pretty much what happened in Wicked. We saw that Elphaba was always trying to do good. Glinda was sort of starting to come to terms with Elphaba. We saw throughout the film, especially towards the end. But for some reason, I think we see that Glinda's not really able to shake off this feeling that she has to sort of stay neutral to everything. And that's why we see her sort of have a hesitation and try to stop Elphaba at a point. Even the wizard tells Elphaba that they will be able to be there with them, and even Glinda can be there with them and make her powers and things like that. And that's sort of in a way to try and make Glinda have Elphaba be convinced to help the wizard with the spell books and things like that in order to control more of Oz. And Jeff Goldblum played this character so well. Like, I was really pissed off with Jeff Goldblum here. Now, one of the things that's interesting here too is that we have Nessa Rose Throp, who is indeed going to later become a very crucial character. And I really think that was the reason that we saw that John Chu wanted to split this up, because I think if you just start introducing these characters in this short runtime, I don't think it would have as much as weight as we would have loved it to have, right? I think that was something that we definitely wanted to sort of save up for the future, and I think that's going to be something that's going to pay off very well. Idina Menzel, Christine Chenoweth here were great as well. Really seeing them on the big screen after they were the original Elphaba and Glinda actresses really just cements this musical as so timely. Everybody in my audience was so happy about that. We do get to see the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, as well as the Lion and Dorothy at the beginning of the film, and they will actually have a role going forth in the upcoming film that's going to be coming out next year, Wicked Part 2, which we'll talk about Wicked Part 2 and what it entails on Sunday's video, but that's going to be full of spoilers for Wicked 2, so just know that going into advance. But I really did love this story and how it was told and everything about it. And I think that the way the movie starts off with the Wicked Witch of the West being like gone and them celebrating on Oz and everything, and then seeing how Glinda acts with everything that's being happening, I think that really sets up the mood for the next film, and we really start to understand what's going on here. And I thought that was brilliant to start off the movie like that. Like, we see how the people of Oz have been turned against this person that's really there fighting for everybody to just have the same rights, to be free and all of that. But at the end of the day, she was painted as the villain just because she wasn't there to help like get the wizard and Madame Marvel's like goals and all of that, because they just want to control and power over everyone, whereas Elphaba wanted everybody to just be free. And I thought that was such a great way to end the film, is by showing Elphaba not afraid anymore, to really show herself. Because throughout the beginning of the film and in the middle and all of that, Elphaba was always like timid and trying to hide away and not really show herself or be herself. But by the end, she's not afraid anymore to go out there and just be in front of everybody. That gorgeous shot at the end with Elphaba and the wizard and Glinda and Madame Marvel all standing at the edge, just looking at each other. It's truly, truly incredible stuff, honestly. And I'm excited to see Wicked Part 2 in the coming year. So let me know what you thought about Wicked Part 2. Let me know what you thought about Wicked Part 1 and its ending. But yeah, pretty much the wizard wanted to remove the animals. He wanted to sort of label them as an enemy in order to sort of unify the rest of Oz and sort of have more power to himself and be able to be elevated even higher. This man doesn't have powers or anything like that. He uses these elaborate effects, this giant head and things like that, in order to come off as a grander presence than he really is. Elphaba is the real deal. She has magical powers and things like that, and so he wanted to harness that and use that, just as Madame Marvel is using her own with the weather and things like that as well, which that's going to play a crucial part in Wicked Part 2, which we will talk about this Sunday. I'm very excited. Wicked pilled myself. I want to watch the Broadway musical, y'all. I want to watch this. Is it still playing? I gotta look into this. But so we see Fiyero that once he hears Elphaba has now been dubbed the Wicked Witch, he's racing off in his horse to try and find Elphaba, we assume. Nessa Rose as well, once she hears this, is shocked and dismayed about her sister. But we also learn that maybe Governor Throp is going to die as he kneels over with a heart attack at the end of this. And this kind of sets up for part 2 what's supposed to be happening. And I'm very excited to talk more about that as well, because all of these characters definitely do have an interesting aspect to them and where they go in Wicked Part 2. So stay tuned for that video where we discuss more of that and my thoughts and opinions on it, as well as some other amazing things. So don't worry. And now the question remains, how will Glinda go forth now, as she is sort of looked upon by Madame Marvel and the Wizard of Oz to sort of be the one that's supposed to bring Elphaba back? Will they now look at Glinda as maybe we can train her to become the magic person that we can control and sort of push our agenda forward, right? Like, that's going to be interesting right there. Fiyero as well, he sort of was caught in between all of these things happening with Glinda and Elphaba, and it seems that he really took it to heart to hear Elphaba now being dubbed as enemy number 1. And it was crazy how quickly Oz turned on somebody just because of the Wizard of Oz saying that this is who you have to turn on, right? Like, that really was insane that now she is the enemy. And as we saw at the beginning of the film, they were all happy when she died after Dorothy threw the water on her. So Madame Marvel as well was just using Elphaba and was just really waiting for somebody with magic to come around in order to bring them to the wizard so that they can do the wizard's bidding, as well as Madame Marvel, who's also capable of controlling weather, which, like I said, is going to be very, very important. And it looks like now Madame Marvel as well as the wizard are going to set their eyes on Glinda to be their spokesperson of sorts, and sort of the one that gets everybody against the Wicked Witch of the West, as they say now, because they're going to say that Glinda was there. And that's going to be very crucial once we get to part 2, and we'll talk more about part 2, like I said, later on in the week as well, so stay tuned for that. But the way that this movie ends with Defying Gravity as being the final single is actually the way that the musical ends for its part 1 as well, because it does have a 2-part structure, and this is really just part 1 that we've seen. There's a whole other structure that comes after it, and I've already looked into it, like I said, and it just sounds so great, honestly. I'm excited to talk more about it on our video on Sunday, so make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell. I want to do a live for Wicked as well if y'all want to discuss it even more. Maybe we can do it tomorrow or Saturday after more people watch it, and y'all can let me know your thoughts and opinions on it. Like I said, I'm always interested in hearing what y'all think, especially as somebody like myself that never watched the play or the musical. I just want to know what y'all think about it in contrast with the movie. So stay tuned for that, and we'll talk more things Wicked as well, and we'll talk more about what's coming in part 2. Just make sure you remember that was a lion cub. It's going to be crucial. But anyways, I'm excited. Cannot wait. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, follow us wherever you can, notification bell, turn that on. Make sure you're subscribed. Instagram, Twitter, Threads, our website, all provided down below. Follow us there, and I'll see you next time.
I'm not afraid. It's the wizard who should be afraid of me.